All right. It appears as though I am live. Was live streaming a couple weeks ago, but all sorts of developments in the Epinephrine Island story. And I figured, you know what, there's enough stuff here to actually talk about, although we all know that YouTube's algorithm not a fan of talking about certain things, so I got to figure out a way to dance in the minefield here and figure it out. So if I use certain, if I talk around things, it's just because I know that the algorithm already hates me, so I probably shouldn't care that much. But I'm still going to try and be careful how I describe things because I don't want to get completely my channel nuked if possible. I like to catch up with you guys. So yeah, so I figured today we're going to do a spiritual analysis, a psychological analysis of people that are in the epinephrine files. And there's a guy, I've talked about him on Twitter or X or whatever, and maybe I talked about him here, but there's a guy who always, when I'm eating my breakfast sandwich in Panera, he will often sit next to me and then he will start prompting me or goading me to talk about politics or all sorts of stuff. And then it's like an awkward thing because I always get my breakfast sandwich and you don't want to, you want to be polite, but at the same time, I don't particularly want to be talking about evil islands with somebody, especially if there's all sorts of other people around me who I know they're going to get bent out of shape if I'm talking politics, and I don't want to get in a fight in Panera and end up on TikTok or YouTube or whatever. So I just want to mind my own business for the most part. But every once in a while I'll be like, you know what, fine. I was like, you want to prompt me to talk about little Jeffrey in his island? All right, I'm going to give you everything that's on my mind, and you'll probably never talk to me again because I'm going all out. Let's see. American Zombie, what's up? What's up? Thanks for tuning in. Time Warrior Saga, Dougcast appeared when I was looking for something to listen to. What a coincidence. Cool. Well, we got plenty to talk about. I got a number of little bullet points here, and I'll try and riff off those. So I got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H for Jeffro Epinephrine and his island. There was the artist versus writers debate that showed up in my feed recently. Once again, it's an annual thing. And I will try and speak it. I don't know if I would say tap dance, but I'll try and be as tactful as I possibly can to say a few things about the artist versus writers debate, because a lot of times it really just it irritates me when I see people that just say ridiculous things about writers, and it's like, do I want to weigh in on this? Because a lot of these people, they say that they're like, I welcome this. Well, they usually will say fight, and it's like, I don't want to fight with you. I want to actually have like an intelligent discussion about stuff. So the second people start talking about how they want to fight, I'm like, all right, well, I'm not even going to engage in that because I don't even want to fight. But if we even agreed to your premise that you want to fight, especially when it's artists and they're talking about writers, and it's like, you want to pick a verbal fight with somebody who knows how to wield words. You're saying that's what you want, but it's been my experience that people that solicit fights with, wordsmiths, and they're not wordsmiths, when they get beaten down with words, all of a sudden they change their tune really fast, and then you're the bad guy, you're picking on people, you're being mean, and all this sort of stuff. So it's like, you got to be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it. Was that the Metallica? That which you fear the most might meet you halfway. I think that was a cover of there was a Pearl Jam cover. Was it one of those female artists back in the day? And it was a great line. It was like, that what you fear the most might meet you halfway. So again, if you're an artist out there and you want to pick verbal fights with lexical wizards, you might want to be careful about that because yeah, you might actually get the thing you asked for. So anyway, I will try to be tactful. I guess already I've been a little barbed on that one. And then we'll go back in the day. We'll talk about the how do I say this? It all bleeds together with stuff in my feed, and saw some stuff on the implosion of CG. Mikey No Mo has been out there hot and heavy, and speaking of conservatives and liberals and all this sort of stuff, it all bleeds together. So I thought I would give my 2 cents on a few things on Mikey No Mo's documentaries and little like mini videos that he's doing, and how a lot of the things that have been transpiring in hindsight, I don't even want to say in hindsight, but very early on, you knew that it wasn't going to last. Like, people were going to part ways because philosophically they were not on the same page. So kind of talk about that. So let's see. Let's go first. Boink. Boink. All right. So let's see. Oh, and speaking about the politics and stuff like that. So from the Common America account, happy President's Day. Fun fact, Carly's favorite presidents are George Washington and Calvin Coolidge. Use code PRESIDENT at iconiccomics.com to receive a 20% discount. That's a big percentage that we usually reserve for Black Friday. So again, and actually I should contact them because they actually still have the banner up for Black Friday. But regardless, I got to get the President's Day sale up there. So if you want 20% off, you should be able to just put in that promo code. And we got Japanese versions of Demon's Match. We got Seraphim Angel plushies. We got rosaries. We got Soul Finder books 1 through 4. We got short stories like Noctis Trari and Warcry. We got vinyl records. We got pins. We got Cairo mugs. We got bundles. We got everything. We got polo shirts. We got bags. Gym bag. I'm forgetting about some of my own merchandise here. Hardcover, soft covers. Back in the day, the Black Ops X Common America X Soul Finder CD soundtrack. So you could go back in time to CDs, or you could go to vinyls. Got t-shirts, Cairo t-shirts, original artwork from Black Tide back in the day. Gotta probably update that with some new art one of these days. But anyway, the point is, President's Day, 20% off sale. And speaking of Calvin Coolidge, again, when I get into the philosophical stuff on indie comics movements and where they went and how they devolved into degeneracy and all sorts of ridiculous things, you knew, because there was, maybe I should even start there. I don't even know. But there was the guy I was talking about. Are we going to go in reverse order here? I don't even know. Where is it? All right. I guess I'll be bouncing around here, but here we go. So you still have the same people that are, going after Eric July day after day after day after day after day, and all of this sort of stuff. And so that actually brought in the, conservative and liberal and all this sort of stuff debates, and who supports whom and all of this. So Eric was, giving his point of view on this, and then I gave my own. So there's the artist versus writers debate, but then there's the right-wing creator versus left-wing creator and all this sort of stuff. And then from my point of view, it's like, what if you actually just, how do I say it? You're a writer by vocation who cares deeply about the craft of storytelling and art, who just so happens to be conservative and a Catholic man, but I'm not defined by my personal politics. I care about story. I care about art. Like, where do you go if that's who you are? So, here we go. So it's a strange place to be when you're a creator who deeply cares about the craft of storytelling and art, while also not fitting neatly into prepackaged identity boxes by tastemakers and wannabe gatekeepers across the ideological spectrum. Speaking only for myself, I've been called, quote, right wing, quote, fake conservative, fake Christian, a Catholic cultist, and extremist, SJW. I should add SJW spy in there, and a slew of other contradictory and discombobulated insults. Don't even get me started on religious influencers who want nothing to do with me because I'm either too Catholic, not Catholic enough, or not the right man of faith because I am Catholic. It's that Goldilocks situation, especially if you're trying to sell indie comic books. There's all these people, and they are the ones that define themselves by their ideology or their religious denomination or all of these sorts of things. It's like they don't put writer vocation first. It's, I'm this thing who just so happens to be as a writer, as opposed to a writer who also blah, 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 blah. And so then they start letting things dictate the story in ways that are warped or whatever. In short, I look at it like I'm going to do my best to honor God with my books, which are the spiritual equivalent of a kid giving dad a messy Father's Day card for the old refrigerator, and my creator will take care of the rest. Okay, so my whole thing with this, if you saw this debate pop up, is I don't care, because every once in a while you get people that are complaining like, oh, why don't like conservative influencers or billionaires or whatever, why aren't they funding not Catholic, conservative creators and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, dude, a lot of those people, they, first of all, if you don't kiss their butts, then they don't want anything to do with you because they want you to feel like you're beholden to them. Like there's like an ego thing there. So there's that, and then there's the other thing where it's like some of these people, if their whole shtick is talking about how there's nothing good out there and the left controls X, Y, and Z, there's nothing we can do. Well, they don't want to actually point to people that are doing the things that they say that they want done, because that sort of undercuts their own argument. So like in a really bizarre way, sometimes I have found that these quote unquote culture warriors, they really don't want to put a spotlight on people that are doing the thing that they say is either impossible or the only saviors that are out there are them. By the way, send me your super chats and all this sort of stuff. And so there's that. So in my mind, it's like, just do the work, man. Just focus on the story, focus on the art, just put your head down. And the person that you really need to talk to about your work is God. Because if you're doing God's will, as I've said before, like you're not going to fail. You cannot fail. If you are doing your best to honor God through your storytelling and your art, if you're trying your best to tap into the good and the true and the beautiful, and you put it out there, if God wants you to be seen by millions of people or whatever it is, it's gonna happen. But again, you have to have the faith of a mustard seed in order for those things to happen. So you just got to put it out there, and you have to ultimately be like, yeah, it would be nice if so-and-so and so-and-so that says that they want, great stories and great art, if they actually put a spotlight on you. But if they don't, who cares? You just got to keep plugging away and putting it out there and trust that over time you are going to make headway. Like, people could argue about stuff all they want, but at the end of the day, the content will stand out over time. You just have to keep chipping away and chipping away and chipping away. Like your own career in some strange way is like a block of rock that you're the sculptor. It's going to take a while. You have to just keep going, and you have to have faith in the process And just keep, like I said, saying your prayers. Low Pro, thanks for tuning in. I hope to be so small that the devil doesn't notice me. Great quote. Jean-Luc says, hey, Mr. X. Oh, Mr. X is here as well. Time Warrior Saga. I'm tired of egos I can barely tolerate and deal with mine. Ego is the signpost to drive by, says Jean-Luc. So, yeah. So, anyway, with the conservative versus liberal debate, my thing is like, dude, I just want to be seen as a guy who really cares about the craft of storytelling and writing and collaborating with artists and other people and doing like really cool stuff. But if along the way, people are like, oh, he is also Catholic. Oh, he's also conservative. If you want to look into that, great. But basically, if you want to get a psychological profile into who I am, it's embedded in all the stories. So, you know, sometimes people talk about being subversive and this and that and the other thing. It's like, on some level, I mean, it is subversive. It is subconscious. We'll get back to the Epinephrine Island stuff. Speaking of like subconscious and the spiritual and all that. So, Lowplo says I read it in the Soul Finder book. So yeah. So anyway, so I was posting my own thoughts on the conservative creator versus a liberal creator sort of stuff, and that gets into this. You know, I was talking about the CG and movements and how it sort of like went off the rails and why. Oh, that's where you go. So there was a guy in here. He goes, a person. He goes, the F, you were called an SJW? And yeah, who was I called an SJW by way back in the day? Well, it was all of the leaders, the self-professed kings of CG back, what was it, 2018, when they were saying that myself and Timothy Lim, quote unquote, ambushed them in a live stream that they put together, that they were the ones that organized, and they knew exactly where Tim and I stood on all of our issues, and we're like, hey, this would be a really good idea if we had this debate about this, because it would be really entertaining. And then when Tim and I were actually saying what we believed, and Tim made people look absolutely ridiculous by quoting them verbatim in context, well, then all of a sudden it was an ambush, and then all of a sudden SJWs, Tim and myself allegedly were trying to ambush people and take away a movement from real conservatives. And so for a long time, I was called an SJW by a bunch of people and whatever. So anyway, I pointed people to Mikey No Mo's documentary on this, How to Kill a Movement. And my stance was, this is a must-watch documentary by Mikey No Mo. People who see indie comics as a fixed pie will go to great lengths to make sure you don't get what they feel is their slice. And again, check it out if you haven't checked out Mikey's documentary. Very, very good. It shows you exactly. And so then this guy, a person, comes back. He goes, okay, I watched it. It left out some details. Mark Waid's bullying, Vertigo Comics, Rags' involvement, Marsha Cook, the Dynamite Comics thing, etc., etc. So this is very interesting. I don't know who this guy is, but he's saying here that he didn't. He's like, what? You were called an SJW? But then he comes back down here, and he was deep into the history of CG. So much so that he's talking about, anyone who starts talking about rags and stuff like that, and it's like, that guy knows everything. So when he put his original comment there, he must have known that I was called an SJW. If you know this much, that you're going, these are the deep cuts of CG, and you're like, oh, he forgot this, he forgot that, he forgot the other thing, etc., etc. But it's like, but then it's like, were you just playing stupid there? And what you were trying to like get me to say a very specific thing, and I didn't say it, and I just was like, hey, check this documentary out. And he's like, it's almost like he wanted me to respond with a very specific thing, and I didn't do it. And when I responded with the documentary, then it was just like, crap, he didn't say the thing I wanted him to say. He didn't fall for the setup. That's what it seems like to me. Because again, you can't just come back and be like, wow, you knew all sorts of stuff. So much so that you were sort of like, telling Mikey No More what you would have done if you did this documentary. And so anyway, I guess, while we're on it, I guess we'll talk about speaking of conservatives. All right, so here's the thing. At the start of CG, you had all these people that were casting themselves as, conservatives and right wing and all of this. But when you get down to it, ultimately, we're going to know the people that actually know a thing or two about Silent Calvin Coolidge, and the people who, let's just say, wear Christian crosses while simultaneously telling people that pornography is totally cool with Jesus and stuff like that. So if you want to know why there was a fork in the road and the Calvin Coolidge contingent went one way and the check out pornography, it's totally fine, no big deal contingent went another way, like that should tell you everything you want to know if you want to know why CG went off the rails. So we'll cover this really quick. So this is in my mind, a very good example of, the people that were calling me back in the day, SJW spies, all this sort of stuff, the character assassination stuff,
It's okay. Porno's okay. It's not something you need to focus on. It's not a good or an evil.
I don't even know how you can wear a Christian cross on a regular basis and then go on a live stream and just be like, there's nothing wrong with porn. Just porn it up, brother.
Not anymore. I think pornography used to be more evil decades ago when
again, this is why the CG of 2026 is the we're live streaming, trying to convince people that, hey, just get into porn, man.
And the women who were involved were, being trafficked and drugged and exploited. But these whores now.
I hate to tell you, but the porn industry in 2026 is still filled with women who are trafficked and exploited and drugged and all of that sort of stuff. And and the women that are doing that on OnlyFans are in fact being exploited. And oftentimes they come from broken homes. They have daddy issues, all sorts of stuff. So you are exploiting a woman who has father issues and wasn't raised properly, because if she was, she wouldn't essentially sell her body to complete strangers, for oftentimes for dollars. Like the highest paid OnlyFans, women out there, yeah, they're making a lot, but there's the vast majority of them are basically putting themselves out there for not very much money, even if you were making the ridiculous money argument. But they are clearly being exploited, and that's going to follow them for the rest of their lives.
Nowadays, I mean, they're making their own money making pornography.
It's totally cool. It's totally cool as long as you're making enough money. I mean, actually, and that goes back to we'll talk about the Department of Justice, when people were calling out the Epstein stuff, and Pam Bondi was just like, hey, but we're making a lot of money. The Dow is 50K. Look at the NASDAQ.
Making their own pornography. They're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. They're all going to hell for it, except for Mint Salad. She's not.
So it's okay. It's not evil. but you're going to hell, but it's fine. So, you see what I'm talking about? Like, in going back to earlier when I was saying I was called all sorts of like strange insults that were contradictory. There was a cognitive dissonance things going on. They were all discombobulated. This is what I'm talking about. It's mixed messages all over the place.
On heaven, but they're all going to hell for it. It's not necessarily an evil thing anymore, and it never really was. It's okay.
It never really was. So within the span of 45 seconds, it was evil, but it's not anymore. But it is evil, but it never was evil. Got it?
Hey, it's fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
Stop worrying about it. Stop pretending you don't do it for Melanie Mack's sake. I think Melanie Mack does it too.
So here's the thing about, and we'll talk about this in the Epinephrine Island stuff. Human beings, due to original sin, human beings are fallible creatures. You will be tempted by all sorts of things, whether it's lust, whether it's wrath, whether it's gluttony. You could go down the list of sinful behaviors and vices and all of that sort of stuff. And no Christian who actually takes their faith seriously is going to be like, I'm infallible, I'm a saint, I'm going to heaven, and all this sort of stuff. They're going to be like, no, I'm a sinner, and I often give in to temptation. But the fact that you give into a temptation does not make the temptation itself fine. It doesn't make your actions fine. And it's just further proof that you need to repent for your behavior and you turned away from God, and now you need to turn back to God.
I don't like these people. Thank you, Mensalve. Yeah, Mensalve is going to heaven. But the rest of the whores are going to hell, I'm sure. Or not. Maybe they're not. Who knows? They're women. They're doing a good service for humanity. I haven't decided. I don't care. It was in your...
So again, if you want to know why CG devolved into what it's devolved into in 2026, it's because essentially they're the type of individuals that will tell you that while wearing a cross around their chest that porn is totally cool, it's perfectly fine. Don't worry about it. If you do actually say that there's something disordered about it or sinful about it, then you're the problem. So yeah, very interesting. Low pro. Hypocrisy isn't falling short of your own ideals. Hypocrisy is holding others to a different standard than you hold yourself. Well said. So yeah, that's the other thing is a lot of times when people talk about Christians, I've seen, again, going back to the people that call me like a fake Christian and all of this sort of stuff, it's like, what are you talking about? I've never said that I'm better than other people, that I'm somehow immune to various temptations across the board, or anything along those lines. In fact, I've said quite the opposite. I've just said, I got serious issues and I need a savior. And I actually need Christ really badly because I've found that over the course of my life when I deviated from the path that Christ had for me, that my life went out of control and it just was not good. Psychologically, spiritually, physically, for my health and all of these sort of in terms of the toll that it takes on you when you're not living in alignment with God's will for your life and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so that's a good springboard to the Epinephrine Island stuff. So, all right. So let's play a little bit of Tim Dillon here. I should be able to do this as long as I break it up. Hopefully I don't get dinged with the algorithm live stream. I don't know how all that stuff works. I don't live stream enough.
The Dow right now is over. The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow.
All right. So this was when everybody was like, what is going on? Why is the Department of Justice redacting all sorts of names? They're all blacked out. They don't want to put videos out there. They're protecting everybody. Like, why is nobody? You have the Ghislaine Maxwell figure. She was the fixer for Jeffro out there. doing all, all the trafficking and all of that sort of stuff. She's in jail, and she was sent to prison, but she was apparently a fixer for nobody, because none of the clients are actually in prison either. They weren't prosecuted. So what's going on? So then the attorney general is just like, oh yeah, but we're making so much money, we need to be focused on that. I hate to tell you that Americans with a functioning moral compass do not care about making money in their like 401ks or their Roth IRAs and indexed funds and all this sort of stuff. When it compares to this, it's like you're just comparing like apples and I don't know, like kumquats.
It's over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming.
That's right.
That's what we
Who cares if we kidnap their children?
So going back to the CG thing, porn is okay as long as the OnlyFans girls are making $100,000 a month. Similarly, Jeffro Epinephrine, hey, why are we going to talk about that when the Dow is 50,000, the NASDAQ is through the roof, and all of sort of, it's the exact same sort of thing. It's like, hey, if we're making money, let's just focus on the money.
Right. What does it matter? Who cares if we kidnap them? The Dow is up. The Dow's up. Who cares if we snatched your kids and took them to an island to abuse them? The Dow is up. So what? So what? We're part of an ancient blood cult. The Dow is up.
This was actually like just a savage takedown of the Department of Justice. Mr. Grahovac, hello. Nice to see you as well. Time Warrior Saga. Yes, Bondi, the Dow is good. That is not the question or the topic. Keep to topic. Exactly. And so that's a good one.
So what? We perform sacrifices to deities so that we can have their power. The Dow is up. You know what the NASDAQ's doing? The blue chips, the S&P 500.
Now, one of the good things to come from all of this, if you had to come up with something, was that, I think I said this in my last live stream, is that if you see that this level of evil exists, then you know that the opposite must exist. But I think I even said this in my post here. What is interesting about the JF files is that you have a population of political power players who are often very secular, very materialistic in public, who push the citizenry to believe the demonic was superstition. It's all a fairy tale, while privately engaging in occult practices. So to me, that is very, 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 very interesting. If you go through and you look at all these political power players, the activists, the money men, the bundlers, all of these people from around the world, the diplomats and bureaucrats from Europe and the Middle East, and all these people, publicly, these are all these sort of red tape, administrative state overlords. And they are the type of people that they push the culture to believe Jesus is a fairy tale. You don't need to believe any of that. Oh, you believe in the demonic? You're crazy. You're a cultist. No, the only thing that exists is matter, the material world. That's what you got to focus on, everybody. Don't all these other guys, you know those Catholic dudes out there that are talking about demons? They're crazy. They're totally nuts. They're off the wall. Do not listen to those guys. Okay, so that's what they say. That's what they're like in public. And then privately, they're engaging in occult ritualistic practices that people have known about for thousands of years. So think about your liberal, secular, materialist friends out there. If you're a Christian, you believe in God, who over the years have like laughed at you, mocked you, said you were crazy, said you were extremist, all of this sort of stuff, who got their information from the mainstream media, from politicians that they idolize, and all of this sort of stuff. They were the ones that were essentially brainwashed by people who were privately going to islands and mansions in New Mexico. Jeffro Epinephrine had he had a giant estate down in New Mexico, where it was like him and was Bill Richardson and all these other people, that they were doing the exact same stuff in New Mexico that they were doing on the islands. And so your friends who mocked you, the family members who mocked you, were doing inadvertently the work of people who were privately carrying out satanic rituals. Like, I don't mean to laugh. It's like you have to laugh, because otherwise you'll just start crying. I remember, I think I said this in my last stream, years ago, I was on a couch in New Jersey with my dad after going through all the WikiLeaks files with the John Podesta and the Clintons and all of these people, and researching all of this sort of stuff as like various websites were being scrubberooed of all the evidence. So you couldn't, they didn't want you to connect various dots and know that oh, you're totally crazy for this, but the guy that you're talking about, oh, he's actually the boyfriend of the guy who heads up Media Matters, which is like a giant liberal nonprofit that is in tight with Clinton, the Podestas, Jeffro Epinephrine, Weinstein, all of these people, Ghislaine Maxwell, who went to the wedding of Hillary Clinton's kid, whatever her name is. I'm getting old, and my brain's going 1,000 miles an hour here. Going to Clinton family weddings, the fixer for Chelsea Clinton, going to Chelsea Clinton's wedding. They got the photos up there, the Getty photos or whatever it is, the Associated Press, all this. So they were saying I was on my couch after I went through all these WikiLeaks. I was like, why? They're gaslighting people. These people are at a minimum, the FBI should be all over these people, and they're not. And they're saying that everybody who is seeing what's going on is crazy. And they're literally abusing children. It is so obvious that is what they're doing, and they're telling you that you're nuts. And then my dad's just sitting there looking at me like he's my dad, he's a nice guy or whatever, but he's like old. He's just like looking at me like I think my son's crazy. Like, he didn't say that. I don't know what he was thinking. But he's just like sort of like looking at me, and I'm like, I'm telling you, this is what's going on, and nobody's doing anything about it. And so then fast forward years, we get 3.5 million files dumped from Jeffro here and his accounts and all of this sort of stuff. And you're like, yep, everything that they said you were nuts for, it was actually happening. And we still haven't even seen the worst of it.
Why don't you shut your mouth about the kids that we abducted and sacrificed, so we can please Lucifer?
Again, I don't want to laugh, but he's just basically calling it out. This is exactly what's going on.
A Baal. So what? Step down and up. So what? We worship Baal. Maybe you should thank Baal for the Dow being at 50,000. You're a pretty good stock trader, Raskin. From what I hear, maybe instead of angering Baal, you thank Baal.
So my question is, where is your limit? What's going on right now? Like, if humanity accepts this, if people don't take a stand right now, if you essentially give up and you listen to the people that say that you need to shut up about this, it's going to lead to much worse. So we know that these people, a lot of the times, again, this is, if you look into this sort of stuff, they will tell you exactly what they're doing. And it gets into all the occult stuff where they need to essentially, it's like Satan. Satan suggests stuff. He doesn't, he can't force you to do anything. It's just whispering in your ear, giving you, screwy arguments and blah, 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 blah. And then ultimately you are the one who has to use your free will to decide to go along with it or not. So these people that are into all of these things, they find ways to essentially, for all intents and purposes, let you know ahead of time, we're doing this. So that way you consent, like silence is consent unto the law sort of situation. It's like, well, I told you, and you just sat there and you did nothing about it. So if you don't do anything about it, then that means you're cool with it, essentially. And so that's what's happening right now, is on some level, they've dropped 3.5 million documents. They have all of the emails. They have various pictures. At some point in time, there'll probably be certain videos that will come out. And then we even know there's videos out there if you want to go down the rabbit holes, but I don't suggest it. Things that will just leave you seriously scarred. All you really need to know is that it's all out there and it's happening. So yeah, if you don't do anything, then it sets the stage for much worse to happen. Let's see, go back to the chat really quick. Jim, with the Jeff Rose stuff, you can both see the full scope of who the evil people are, and anyone who reaches a certain level in society is going to get an invitation. Agreed. Jim, if you reach a certain level in society, Satan comes to you like he came to Christ in the wilderness and makes the same promises. Everyone that has that happen is tested. Well said. Well said again. And so, I guess that gets into what I was saying to the Panera guy as well. So the Panera guy who talks to me was just like, why would somebody do, how are you someone able to do this sort of stuff? And so I was thinking about powerful people, and it's one of those things where it's like, say you want to control the flesh of millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people. It almost seems as though Satan is saying to these people, oh, you want to control the flesh, the bodies, the corporal, bodies of millions of people? I can make it happen. But the price is that you become a prisoner to your own flesh. You become a slave to your own flesh. And so you want to imprison the planet under your authority? I can make that happen, but you need to enter into my prison. You become my prisoner. And so somebody that's not thinking on an eternal timeline, if they're only thinking about the here and now, and they're just like in the sensory experiences that they're having in the moment. Hey man, we're just living for the moment, that sort of thing. If they're only doing that, then that becomes, to the materialist, to the secularist in many ways, which again, it gets really weird, because in many ways they're so latched on to the physical world, but then they do actually believe in Satan or whatever. But it's one of those things where it's it becomes an enticing contract that you would enter into, because you're just okay, the power that you get from being, Secretary of State, or even the President of the United States, or, these people in the European Union, or Prince Andrew, or all these sorts of people, they're above everybody else. We're superior to the little people. It's intoxicating to them, and so they get a taste of that power. And then also, we could get into the flesh and what they experience and all this sort of stuff. They're so intoxicated by it that they're okay, this is a deal I will enter into. It's worth it to them, because in that moment, because again, they're not thinking about it from God's point of view, God's vantage point from eternity. They don't realize that time goes by in a blink of an eye, snap of your fingers, boop, 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 it's over. You're dead, brother. You could take a nap thinking, hey, I'm just gonna go take a nap for a couple hours and get up, you have some chips and salsa or whatever, you're dead. So tomorrow is never promised. But they're not thinking about that. They're just like, no, I'm on private jets. I got hangars filled with luxury cars. I got staff. I got chefs that are cooking me anything I want, including clumps of cells. Again, I got to be careful of the algorithm here. Again, very interesting to note that all of these people, I think I may have said this in the last stream as well. These are the same people that wanted the culture to believe that unborn children are just quote unquote clumps of cells. They're basically like impossible meat. Some Bill Gates created impossible meat. It's just strings of protein, guys. If you just put enough protein chains together, it's no different than a kid, really. When you think about it, we're all just cells. We're all just protein and creatine, and it's all nutritious. And so that's what you got to think of like children as. But anyway, they get you to basically dehumanize children while simultaneously abusing them, consuming them, using them in ritualistic sacrifices. It's just like you're just like, it's like I feel like YouTube's gonna take me down here in a second. If it was 2020, I probably would be down right now talking about all this sort of stuff. Might take my channel away. If they do, just go to WordPress. I just will fire up the WordPress blog or something along those lines. But anyway, again, think about all your friends that mocked you over the years and said you were a quote conspiracy theorist. You were insane. You're off your rocker. They were acting like you were just pulling this sort of stuff out of thin air, as opposed to, WikiLeaks documents where like Hillary Clinton's right-hand man, John Podesta, and his brother, Tony Podesta, and all these other guys, like literally have statues, of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims in their mansions, the ones that are all like contorted in weird ways as he tortured and killed them and ate them. Like, ask yourself a question. This was in the Washington Post, as I said in my last stream. Ask yourself a question. You're a millionaire. Why are you going to get a giant gold statue of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims, all contorted in strange shapes, tortured, and put that front and center in your house? Does that sound like somebody that's, has all their screws in place in their head, or does it sound like someone that's got a few screws loose? You're the Podesta family, and you got this erotic, or quote unquote erotic art collection. Again, Washington Post article. And you look at the art, and all of the art is of children that are in these very evil circumstances, and it's very, very dark, and it appears from the art that these children are either being set up to be abused or are in the process of being abused. Why, as a millionaire connected to the Clintons, the highest level politicians, NGOs, billionaires like Jeffrey, all these people, why would you fill your house with that sort of art? Are you just telling me that you just like to wake up in the morning and look at images of abused children? Like, that seems very, very weird. And why are you in emails talking with these people in coded language about paying $65,000 plus for hot dogs in the old White House? And why are they talking about, hey, we got to be careful about this. We agreed, that we were going to be careful about this sort of stuff, and having $65,000 worth of hot dogs in the White House, you're not really being careful. I mean, something's going on here. I mean, sounds very, very evil to me. So here's the thing. If you were actually having hot dogs So I grew up just outside Chicago, and Portillo's is a famous, fast food place in the Chicagoland area. And when I was an intern for my congressman at the time, way back in the day, he really liked Portillo's, and he would. I don't know. He never got it for the office. I wish he would have, but I heard that he would sometimes get Portillo's flown from Chicago to Washington D.C. Whatever. I'm not saying that like instantaneous, like an hour or whatever, but he would basically get with Portillo's, and they had hot dogs, hamburgers, all sorts of Italian beef sort of stuff. They had their cake shakes and all, whatever. They have all sorts of stuff. So in an email, if you were actually getting hot dogs, you'd be like, dude, Portillo's, I'm from Chicago. We're getting Portillo's for the office party because everybody here is from the Chicagoland area and everybody knows about Portillo's. So we're going to order, we'll just make it up, $500 worth of hot dogs. That would be something, if you read it, you would be like, yeah, it sounds like that guy likes Portillo's. Seems rational, seems logical that he would order Portillo's, and we're looking at the prices for said hot dogs, and they match with an office party consisting of a congressman, his staff, and maybe other staffers. Maybe you go to the Senate side and Dick Durbin, even though he's a Democrat or whatever, you're like, hey, Senator Durbin, we're getting Portillo's. This is my peace offering to you guys in the Senate. My peace offering to you guys in the Democrats. Come over for Portillo's. That seems sane. What doesn't sound sane is $65,000 for hot dogs while people are simultaneously saying, hey, I thought we were going to be careful about ordering the hot dogs. Okay? So back in the day, guys like me and guys like yourself who are all watching this were just like reading WikiLeaks documents, and we're like, this does not sound good at all. And we also would go to the FBI, the agencies and law enforcement, and we looked into it and we're like, hey, a lot of the things that they're talking about are established, verified, objectively used by law enforcement as people, like the code words that people use to abuse children. So why would you, if you were a congressman or a senator or, their staff, why everything seems to be lining up that at a minimum, you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. But it sounds like you're doing something very, 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 very dark and evil. So yeah. Let's see. Granny had more chairs here. That's so gruesome, but I absolutely can see them thinking that way. Oh, that was the other thing. So people want to live in an illusion. So back in the day when all of this sort of WikiLeaks stuff was coming out. Oh, and then you go, I don't know if you've seen the Savannah Guthrie and her mom was kidnapped. And apparently, I don't watch cable news anymore. I get little bits and pieces of here and there, whatever. But apparently, Savannah Guthrie's mom, she's like the left-wing, whatchamacallit, she's one of these commentators in the morning and blah, blah. She actually interviewed Guthrie, like one of the Epstein's trafficked, accusers or whatever back in the day. Anyway, her mom was abducted. She is missing, and they were covering this around the clock 24/7 for like a week or two now. And so the guy in Panera was asking me about it, and he's like, what do you think about this? And I was like, okay, first of all, I feel bad, someone's mom was kidnapped or whatever. But ask yourself, why are they covering this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, nonstop? Like, they wouldn't do this. Why is it that Savannah Guthrie's mother gets nonstop coverage for days and days on end, but they didn't do the same exact thing for missing children? Like, doesn't that seem kind of weird that, like, the Department of Justice dumps millions of it's like you got all the Prince Andrew stuff, you got the Bill Gates stuff, you got all these other billionaires that are connected. You got Saudi royalty that's connected and all of this sort of stuff, sending like literal torture videos and all of this sort of stuff. And they're not covering that 24 hours a day, but they're covering this missing mother of a journalist or whatever, one of the network news people. Like, that's very interesting. What's also interesting to me is that her husband, if I'm not mistaken, has a PR firm, and they are deeply connected to the Clintons as well. And then the guy at Panera was like, well, what are you saying about that? Like, I was like, this is all like a can of worms, and it's very difficult to talk about. The one thing that I do know is that everybody who is really close to the Clintons seems to have bad things happen to them. They end up kidnapped. They end up dead. They end up in career-ending scandals. They end up Wiener. What's this? Wiener and Huma Abedin and all this sort of stuff. He was literally Congressman Wiener. What's his name? Was it Henry Wiener? What was his? I forgot his first name. But then he also had like a pseudonym, or he had like an alias where it was like Don Juan, or I don't know, what are those strange aliases. But he was, exposing himself to underage girls as well. All of this sort of stuff. So everybody that's connected to the Clintons and their foundations and PR, like there's always a cloud of Anthony Weiner, Carlos Danger. Thank you, Low Pro. I appreciate it. Cool points for being on the ball with that. So yeah, Carlos Danger. Okay, close to Hillary Clinton. The laptop from hell, allegedly. Oh no, that was Hunter Biden. Again, every single person, the Clintons, the Bidens, all of these people, Carlos Danger, Anthony Weiner also had a laptop from hell, which we've only heard like it's really, really bad. And then if you go down that rabbit hole, where that was sent to New York, and apparently a lot of the cops that were close to that investigation are no longer with us. They either allegedly, deleted themselves, or they died. So what? So again, cloud after cloud of very bizarre things. Don't phrase it. Did I say you're on the ball? You're not on Carlos Danger's balls. You're a sharp dude, Low Pro. We'll put it that way. Let's see, Mr. X. If true, it stinks, but it's not lost on me how much more fever this gets than the missing children are calling out the thousands of named elites. So much for holding truth to power. The only portion these guys in legacy media will talk about nearly as much as anything that allows them to bash Trump or those in his cabinet. To them, it was never about the kids or justice. Yeah. Oh, but that's what I was also going to say. So most people, they want to live in the Mysterio illusion. They don't want to, if you actually admit that all of this stuff is actually real and it's actually happening, well, the truth actually demands action from you. So if you live in a society where it's like Burger King, my way, right away, we got the football, we got the Super Bowl coming out. Oh, that was the other thing, is the media simultaneously, while the Department of Justice was dumping all of this sort of stuff, you have like a week straight or 2 weeks straight or whatever it was of everybody reading through all of these emails, seeing that the quote unquote elites are engaging in all this ritualistic occult practices. They love Satan and Baal and Moloch and all of this sort of stuff. That was actually in the Hillary Clinton WikiLeaks documents as well. It's like they make little jokes here and there, but you're like, why is Hillary Clinton talking about sacrifices to Moloch? Like, who does that in just like their, like, I can't think of one time where I was talking to anyone at Iconic Comics and I was just like, hey guys, before Bell County Comic-Con, blah, 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 and you start going full Hillary Clinton talking about Moloch or something, and you're just like, who does that? Nobody does that. Like, and you're just like, but then her husband was going to the island like dozens of times, and then he was randomly like telling the Secret Service, like, I'm just gonna go alone. You don't need to come along on this ride. It's just me and Jeffrey, and maybe like Kevin Spacey, who knows. But Kevin Spacey was in tight with all those people. Ghislaine Maxwell, there's the picture of Kevin Spacey and Ghislaine on the on the thrones of the king and the queen of England. Like, if that doesn't send a message to you, like, what will? If you have the fixer for a child trafficker and then a Hollywood, elite sitting on the throne, the royal throne in the United Kingdom, the king and queen, like, that sends a message to me, and it sends a message to everybody that's in those circles as well. So that's the other thing, is like these dog whistle type of things. So Kevin Spacey, Ghislaine Maxwell sit on a throne. Like, do you think if you or me were somehow in the royal palace and we just saw the throne, and we're just like, hey, mind if I just, jump on there, just do a little cannonball onto the throne and just make a yuck yuck? Hey, look at me, I'm on the throne. No, you wouldn't be able to do that. But if you're a fixer for Prince Andrew and in Jeffrey, well, now all of a sudden you're on the throne. So they also sent a message to Hollywood. They sent a message to business leaders, the elite in finance, all sorts of people. So yeah, most people do not want to. They want to just go to the Super Bowl. Just tell me about. I just want to focus on the Super Bowl. There's anthropomorphic polar bears making jokes with Pepsi and Coca-Cola. We want to talk about that instead. We don't want to think about this other stuff. So yeah, very interesting.
Stand Paul for what he's done for American 401ks. Paul has done more for the S&P 500 than Joe Biden did. Joe Biden didn't do anything for the S&P 500. We had to go to Moloch and Baal.
So again, and then you go to the Hunter Biden laptop back in the day. Anybody that's seen, so if you remember, and I was working at the Washington Times back then, I was literally not allowed for the longest time to do anything on the Hunter Biden stuff. They designated like one or two guys that were allowed to do it. And myself and my peer Jessica, who's now at like Fox, we basically were not allowed, because before I had been doing stuff on the Pizzagate sort of stuff. I did stuff on the Podestas, Andrew Breitbart's mysterious death. And so my guess is, I don't know for sure, but they were like, we don't want that Doug guy doing anything on the Hunter Biden laptops, because if Doug does these stories, we're going to get our Twitter account nuked. We're going to get our Facebook account nuked. So do not let that guy, I don't know for sure, but I just know that I was not allowed to write on the Hunter Biden laptop. But anyway, then you had the entire intelligence community coming out, and they were saying, oh, this is all fake. This is Russian disinformation, blah, blah, blah. I saw stuff that was on the laptop, and all sorts of other people saw the stuff and then Twitter under Jack Dorsey was scrubbing that all off the internet. And so I was trying my best at the time to like talk about it without talking about it, because I was like, they're gonna nuke my account, but I got to find a way to get the truth out there some way. I got to put enough breadcrumbs out there so people that want to know will find the truth. So it's like, I got to live to fight another day sort of situation. And I guess you would be like, well, that's what the Washington Times was doing too. I'm telling you, if you go back to that time when it was first looked, that story was breaking, and like the stories that they were putting out there, they were the most milquetoast, vanilla, like, I guess we technically gotta like cover this, but let's just say nothing. That's what it felt like to me, where I was just like, if I was writing this story, I'm gonna be like, listen, I look, blah, blah, blah. This is what is in these files, bop, 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 bop. And you can't call that Russian disinformation. And it's not AI. It's not. And so, of course, years later, it comes out, it was legit. It was true. Everything you saw on those files was true. Again, at a very minimum, those are things that if you and I were doing the things that Hunter Biden was doing, we would be in an orange jumpsuit overnight. They would be like, snatch you up, get your court case going, and you're guilty, and we got you in a jumpsuit, and you're pounding rocks, old style, making license plates or something along those lines. Or like the J6 guys, we're going to just throw you into solitary confinement for, 4 years or whatever it was. and throw away the key, and nobody's gonna know about you. Time Warrior Saga. Now I am curious why everything involved with the White Diddy and his pals is being released. Now, it's very interesting. But like I said, at a minimum, if all of this is released and nothing happens, and people are just like throw up their shoulder, like shrug their shoulders, like, I guess there's nothing we can do about it. Like that tells them they can do it and they can get away with it, and there are no consequences. So, but it's one of these weird things where it's like if you're just like an individual person and you're sitting there in like small town Ohio or somewhere in Florida, like you're just like you're like, what do I do? And I think what you do is you just tell the truth to the people that are in your sphere of influence to the best of your ability, and you provide proper context and you provide people to the receipts and let them know. And hopefully at some point in time, there's enough people, because that's the thing is like, you would think that there would be people within the government somewhere, somehow, like you want to talk about whistleblowers, like, hey, whistleblowers, now's the time of all the times in history, or even congressmen. Is there not one congressman that's willing to stand up and like rally people? A lot of times it's like a powder keg. That's the thing. Is like, I really do think that we are in the powder keg is before us. We are in a room. It's filled with a gas of the gas of wrath and anger, righteous anger. And it's like, it just needs a spark. If there was like a couple senators, if there was a couple congressmen, I don't even know, maybe even like a military like general or like somebody who's active, not like a Flynn type of guy who's already like retired or whatever, but maybe. But yeah, I mean, he's already doing what he can. But you need people that are actually in the system operating, who are willing to risk everything to be like, listen, I had access to the videos that they don't want you to see, and they put them all out there, WikiLeaks leak style or something. Something needs to be the spark. And it's just like, if you had, like, I was thinking about it, like if you had like a couple senators, a couple congressmen, and they like went to the National Mall, and they're like, every single day I'm coming out on the National Mall, and I want every single American that's fed up with this to come to the National Mall. And when we receive critical mass and there's millions of Americans here, we're going to march to the Capitol. And you thought they were scared on like January 6th. We're going to make sure that they are absolutely terrified. And who knows what they would do. Again, within the confines of the law, but it wouldn't take that much for somebody that is in a leadership position to do something that is within the bounds of the proper, legal authorities. I got to be careful what I say here, to get enough people in Washington, D.C., in one place where you just have Americans of all political stripes, all ages, who are fed up, who are like, all right, we're marching, all millions and millions of us. And it doesn't matter like what you do. How do I say it? The government should be afraid of you. Like, it shouldn't be that the people are afraid of the government. The government needs to be afraid of you and the American population, and we, the people, when we are appropriately livid at them for not standing up and doing the right thing when faced with, I don't know, again, satanic rituals. That to me, of all the times to be upset and to, let some expletives fly and start flipping over tables, Christ flipping over the tables in the temple. I feel like ritualistic Satan sacrificing of, innocence, that seems to be an appropriate time to, go a little nuts. Michael Keaton, it's like, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. So, yeah. Let's see. Low Pro. Lieutenant Colonel Scheller got fired for asking what the hell happened with the Afghanistan withdrawal. Imagine what would happen if an active duty general publicized freak stuff that the elites are. Exactly. All you need is a couple high-ranking generals, a couple people in the, like, intelligence community who are willing to be like, you know what? This is the moment in history where I gotta lay it all on the line. I gotta risk everything. My career is like, whatever. And I just, if you can't do it now of all the times, then you're kind of spineless and you're kind of ridiculous. And speaking of like how history will look at, like history will look down upon you if you had access to information that would allow for the complete transformation of society from one that turns a blind eye to ritualistic occult sacrifices to one that does not accept that sort of thing. Like, I don't know. I just feel like the guys that are in the intel community, the alphabet agencies, if you have the videos, if you have the laptops, and you have the information, you got to get it out there. Now's the time. Like, come on, man. If you have all the unredacted files, get them out there. That was the other thing is like Pam Bondi and all these people were just like, apparently, like if we released all the files, it would all burn down. Like society as we know it would burn down. And I was telling the guy in Panera, I was like, if the truth is enough to destroy a society, then that society needs to be destroyed. If you're so scared that you can't tell the truth without everything falling apart, it needs to fall apart. Because, I mean, otherwise you're just saying that we need to build a society based on giant lies. And as Tim Dillon is saying here, lies of sacrifice to Moloch and Satan and Baal.
That's Pam Bondi telling everyone to thank Baal, the demon Baal, for the S&P 500, and don't worry about the child sacrifices. But by the way, that's kind of what she's saying.
It is. So, yeah. Anyway, let's see. This is probably like the last thing I was kind of talking about this before. Let's see. A guy at Panera asked me about J. Epps Island why they would do. Okay, so here is my more articulate stance on this. Imagine you have all the fame, all the power, all the money, all the influence you ever wanted, but you still feel empty inside. Imagine you have airplane hangars full of cars, mansions around the world, and the ability to have anything in abundance, but you're still numb. Where does the man who is alive yet dead go in his hunt for fleeting sensory experience or a sense of superiority above the rest of humanity? The answer is he goes to the very places humanity refuses to tread because their conscience screams it is forbidden. A man who is a spiritual zombie looks for temporary highs in his thirst to feel alive, but each time he crosses a dark Rubicon to obtain a hit, he must go further into the darkness for a similar experience. These are not psychological rabbit holes you should explore too deeply. The key takeaway is to know that if this level exists, then you know where you must turn for protection. You must cling to God. So, on a related note, what a lot of people do is if you have a functioning moral compass, if you're a Christian, a lot of times people will project their values onto other people that do not have those values. What you don't understand is that a lot of these people that are in the highest echelons of various governments around the world, a lot of times they're psychopaths. A lot of times they're sociopaths. They are only motivated by power and lust and greed and all of these sorts of things. There are people that, for all intents and purposes, they are like empty husks of human beings. They've suppressed their own soul and spirit so much that there's just this bizarro blackness inside them. And so people like that That was the other thing. And so they have everything. They still feel empty inside. But at times, if they cross the dark Rubicon into these things that like these taboo things that a normal human being is not going to do because their conscience is like, dude, do not go there. That's evil. You were never supposed to go there. Like, even people that don't like believe in Christ or whatever, there's still that part of them that's just like, you can't do that. Do not do that. There are people out there. That's the other thing, is a lot of times governments, people that don't behave by any rules at all, they're willing to break all the rules of civil society. They know that in the short term, they can get ahead of other people by tearing them down, stomping on their necks or whatever, doing things that normal people wouldn't do. So these people that feel empty inside, they go into these dark places. And as I was telling the Panera guy, I was like, so with government officials, a lot of them know that if you're doing certain drugs, heroin and stuff like that, you're going to destroy yourself. And you're actually not going to be able to function. You're not going to actually be able to do your job. And it's only a matter of time before people know what's going on with you, and you're just going to fall apart. So they're like, all right, I can't do drugs. But what they often will go to for various highs is sexual things. They will give into lust, because that is something where it gives them, especially if they're going to these evil, dark places that other people won't go, it gives them a temporary high. It pierces that numb wall that they've built over the course of years momentarily. Like, most of the time, they just feel completely dead all the time. But when they do these things, they briefly, for a brief moment, there's, dopamine hits or adrenaline or whatever it is that breaks through the wall of numbness, of deadness, whatever you want to call it. And so they get a little bit of a hit. They're like, oh, I finally feel alive for a second. But going back to earlier in the broadcast, people that go down the porn rabbit hole, science backs this up, is the deeper that you go, it's just like a drug. It's the exact same thing where it's like, okay, you went a certain amount, like the dopamine, you don't get the hits that you got before. So you have to go deeper and deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole of darkness. You got to do harder and harder drugs to get a lesser and lesser high out of it. And so what happens with the politicians that are going to these islands, you wonder why, like, go through these emails. They're setting up all sorts of strange, elaborate things that are communal in nature that they're doing. It's like you had the one guy, the JP Morgan guy, look like they had the Snow White. They're coming up with like Snow White situations and all these like Disney movie sort of things and all of that sort of stuff. And it's communal. Actually, this is something that I need to look a little bit more into this. But we saw that Jerry Seinfeld was in these files, and he was going to go to the island to drink lemonade with all of these people on the island. But we also know that Epstein's girlfriend, or whatever she was, she got into Columbia University's dental program or something after she was already rejected. So there's all this weird sort of stuff with like dental chairs and sexual things with dental chairs, and his girlfriend was going. Now, I know this sounds weird, but think about, there's the famous Seinfeld episode where they would go to the dentist, they would go under anesthesia, and while that they were under, weird sexual things would happen to like Kramer or George or whoever, or Jerry or whatever. He wakes up, he's still in a daze from the drugs, and he sees the guy zipping his pants up or whatever it was. And so that was one of these famous Seinfeld episodes. But then we know that Epstein has all sorts of bizarro dental sexual things on his island, and his girlfriend, or whatever she was at the time, was literally going to dental school. And so I'm reading all of this sort of stuff, And I'm like, it sounds like they were doing the exact same thing from the episode. Like, is this life imitating art, or art was imitating life? Because we know that Jerry was going to the island to have quote unquote lemonade with his girlfriend and apparently like all this sort of stuff. So you're just like, AL, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. So I'm like, this is really dark. And you're like, again, these are things where it's like, if it was 2016 or something, people would be like, you're completely nuts. And you're like, no, I'm not nuts. Like, it's literally in the files and we know what they do, and they're talking in code. And a lot of times they're not even talking in code. Like in these files, they're just at times just straight up saying things like quote unquote torture or whatever. So you're like, I'm pretty sure these people are all doing these things. Anyway, the point is everything that was going on in this island got weirder and weirder and darker and darker. Why? Because they were after this high that they get, but evil has no depth to it. And actually, that's I think I said in the last stream, Soul Finder Volume 5, Silent Service, is in many ways about all of this. That's what, when you're reading about the nuclear submarines and going into the depths and going into the darkness and all of this sort of stuff, when you finally read the book, this is kind of what a lot of it's all about. And then ultimately, Soul Finder Volume 6 will be about, all right, somebody that's gone this far into the darkness, can you actually bring that person back? Now, obviously, my characters are not doing the Epstein stuff, but I don't want to be writing comic books about that sort of stuff. But if you go that deep into the depths of evil, can you ultimately be brought back, or are there people that are beyond redemption and that sort of stuff? So those are the things that I'm going to try and explore. Anyway, so yeah, there was one other point that I wanted to make about this. Let me see if I got all my notes here. Blah, 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 blah. Secular materialists, those who seek the flesh. It's going to hit me as soon as I move on to another subject, unfortunately. So, what was it I was going to talk about? All right. Well, I guess we'll move on. And if it hits me, it hits me. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So, all right. Pascal, the devil loses courage and power every time he sees a spiritual athlete resist temptations with a fearless heart and a head held high. Saint Ignatius. So, yeah. So the point is, going back to earlier, is you're always going to face temptations, and occasionally we will fall. But when you do fall, the point is that you got to get back up. And if you've turned away from God, then ultimately just turn back to Him as soon as possible. So, all right, let's see. Speaking about the politicians, I guess we could go a little bit more into some of these people in Marxism, in communism, and all this sort of stuff. Bishop Barron was talking about this. AOC was talking about Marco Rubio's overseas, talking about how we're not going to sit by and be the polite, managers of Western civilization's decline. That's not going to happen on our watch. We're not going to do that. And so AOC's response to that was as follows.
Hey everybody, it's Bishop Barron. Just last week, Marco Rubio gave a talk that I thought was really good in Munich. He was talking about the shared culture of Europe and America. He referenced Gothic cathedrals and Dante and Shakespeare and even the Beatles. His point was, we got to get beyond just our political differences and find our sources in the great culture that unites us. And then he took a further step that was very much in line with Pope Benedict XVI and Christopher Dawson, namely that culture is grounded in cult. At the root of all culture is something like religion. And so he wasn't afraid to reference the Christian faith as a key element in giving rise to the shared culture of Europe and America. So a really good speech, I thought.
All right. So going back to some things that I've said on X, at this point in time, if you are still stuck in this Democrat versus Republican dichotomy, which is exactly what they want you to believe that, like, if you're in our tribe, the Republican tribe, we're totally, little angels. And then the Democrats are the same way. And they're like, no, if you're in our, well, that's the funny thing about them is like, they make no qualms about not being like fans of God and Jesus and stuff like that, but they still will pretend as if they're like infallible beings and they're essentially angels. And they just go. But if you go over the course of years, if you look, they both are filled with people that have turned a blind eye to all sorts of corruption. So ultimately, if they just keep pitting you against each other in this never-ending battle where you're just arguing over who's perfect and who's not, it all collapses anyway. So a better way to look at things is just to try to discern the truth in any given situation. And if somebody is telling the truth, you need to latch on to the truth, even if the person who's saying it is someone you don't like. So Democrats are definitely not perfect. And Republicans, if you start going to Mitch McConnell and all these sorts of guys, they are certainly not perfect. And there's all sorts of evidence that they are highly corrupt.
Well, then I think it was yesterday, I saw Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez answering him. And I was very struck by her answer. I thought it was very illuminating. She said, this appeal to culture, it's so thin because culture is ephemeral. It's always changing. And so we shouldn't pay attention to culture. We just pay attention to the material foundations in the class struggle. Well, all of it, everybody, is right out of the Marxist playbook. First of all, that Western culture, as Rubio invoked it, is thin. The culture that gave us all those great figures, that gave us the rule of law, that gave us respect for the rights of the individual, that gave us our democratic political system, that gave us the university system, that's thin. And your argument is, well, because cultures always change. Well, that's a banality. I mean, of course, cultures are alive, they change and evolve. Doesn't mean for a second we can't identify the key elements within a culture that gives it its character.
So anytime you hear politicians that try to boil things down to the material world and class struggles and all of this sort of stuff, when they start going down the road of godless communism and all of that, they're setting you up for failure. And what we've seen from the Jeffro Epinephrine files is a lot of these people talk like AOC in public, and they just say, don't pay attention to culture. Don't pay attention to the supernatural. Don't put your faith in Christ. Just focus on class struggles, blah, blah, blah. While simultaneously, privately, they are engaging in occult practices. And very interesting that AOC is focusing on Marco Rubio talking about, protecting Western civilization, as opposed to going, off the wall on all the Democrats that went to bat for basically child traffickers for decades now.
But also this, to characterize culture as thin is a Marxist move. Marx said that culture is simply an epiphenomenal superstructure on top of the economic substructure. And don't be distracted, therefore, by the culture. That's just protecting the economics at bottom. Well, again, listen to her. Let's pay attention to the material conditions and to class struggle. Again, that's the Marxist playbook.
So I was thinking about this before I put on the live stream, is when you look at all the crazy junk, the crazy crap that is going on right now, everything that has been revealed, think about the fact that of all the times in human history, God from eternity looked at AL, Ethereal Dragon, Mr. X, Low Pro, Time Warrior Saga, anybody who's lurking in the chat, Jim Turner, Grand Admiral March Hare, John Luke, Mr. Gahovac, anybody else who I missed on here, myself, American Zombie, who is definitely not like a zombie, is actually a very cool guy from my conversations with him. Outside of time and space, God, he was like knitting you together, and he's like, you know what? These are the guys and these are the gals that I want at this time in human history, because these are the guys and these are the gals that are going to stand up to Satan. These are the guys that are and gals that are going to expose all these politicians, and they're going to expose godless communism and Marxism for what it is, and they're going to expose and put a spotlight on Jeffro Epinephrine and his island and all the financiers and all the bundlers and all of these people. Like, in my mind, it's actually rather cool. You could have existed. You could have been born at any point in time in history. But at the time when people were like, I feel like we're living in the end times right now. Like, this is crazy. They're just actually disclosing all of this stuff. They're eating people. Like, they're doing all of this evil stuff. And it's actually for everybody to see. It's out there. And it's like, God was like, no, these are the people. These are the soldiers. These are the spiritual combat warriors that I need to go up against these people. Like, I feel like it's an honor in many ways. It's very like humbling. You're just like, dude, I've been tasked. Like, God wouldn't have put you here at this moment in time in history if you didn't feel that you were up to the task of standing up to the AOCs and the Epsteins and the communists and the Marxists and evil island, people and all of this sort of stuff. So in my mind, it's quite nice. It's that we are here, and that it is a separating the wheat from the chaff moment in human history. And we get to be the ones that are calling foul on all these people and getting the rhetorical pitchforks out, and maybe the actual pitchforks at some point in time. So it's a great time to be alive. Every time I wake up, I'm just like psyched to be here and to just be living and being able to talk with you guys and sort all this sort of stuff out and be able to work with Matt Weldon on books and all sorts of other people. So it's very cool. Time Warrior Saga. I think God is looking at me getting distracted instead of doing what I should, shaking his head, I should have put him on a lease. Grand Manuel Martyr, it's definitely an honor. So yeah. Let's see. Is there anything else I missed? We talked about that. The other thing, comics. Man, there was something that on my mind that I was going to talk about. All these people going to the island, and it's irritating me that it'll probably pop in my head like an hour from now. All right, we don't need to talk about crypto. I guess, well, you know what? Really quick, circle back earlier to some of this stuff, and these guys. I know I'm late on this, but I saw, speaking of the old comic skate, the people who said that they were so conservative back in the day, but now they're, Kid Rock was, they had this Turning Points USA sort of thing. I didn't watch it. I didn't watch anything to do with the Super Bowl. But I did see all these people that are mocking Kid Rock and basically saying that, conservatives don't have any talent and conservative artists are always just a bunch of failures and blah, blah, yada, 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 all this sort of stuff. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, Kid Rock was this best-selling artist back in the day who literally did the Super Bowl in 2004 to a giant stadium filled with people. So no matter what you think about Kid Rock, ultimately, he was big enough back in the day, like before he was overtly political and conservative and all this sort of stuff, he was a best-selling artist. He was selling out arenas and maybe even stadiums. I don't know. He was huge. He was doing the Super Bowl and all of this. But then all of a sudden, when he became openly conservative Trump guy, now all of a sudden, he sucked. He always sucked. He isn't worthy of the Super Bowl, so he has to do this like Turning Points USA sort of thing and blah 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 blah. And you're just like, I feel like the people saying this didn't even know that he did the Super Bowl. But it's very interesting when so-called conservatives are coming out against Kid Rock, who again, why is he magically not talented now that he's conservative? But he was talented back in, I don't know, 2004, in the late 1990s, or whenever his, whenever he burst onto the scene. And to me, I was never like a huge fan of the guy per se, but when he does his country stuff, with the gospel singers and all of that, like, you're like, actually, I mean, he is pretty talented, actually. And no matter what you think about like the rock rap sort of Limp Bizkit era in Kid Rock, when they first kind of like burst onto the scene, like they did mash up rock and rap and those sorts of stuff in a way that clearly was fresh enough to enough people to be very popular for a period of time in human history. Again, you don't need to like it, but I mean, just the fact that they were able to like mash certain genres up and styles up and present them in a way that it was like new and fresh to people and they wanted to hear it. Like, I don't know how you could really knock that, but it's telling to me when so-called conservatives, I feel like on a long enough timeline, again, people, their mask will fall, and you will know that when they can't just get away with bumper sticker talking points, when they actually have to, like, I don't know, talk about Calvin Coolidge, for example, they can't really do it. They don't really know. They don't know anything other than whatever you might see. Like, okay, I have a cursory understanding of what it means to be a conservative. And so I'm just going to like say random things that I know that there's an audience out there of people that just want to hear those things, and they'll throw super chat money at me and I'll make money off of them. So it's unfortunate that early on enough people either didn't see or they did not want to see that the people that they were idolizing and were putting up on pedestals who said that they were conservative, they weren't actually conservative. And I actually give people a certain grace period, because there's a certain amount of time when you're getting to know somebody where you're just going to take them at their word, and you'll trust somebody until they give you a reason not to trust them. Or at least that's how I used to be. I sort of waffle these days between like trusting someone until they give you a reason not to, but then also actually just being highly skeptical of everybody, and just being like, you know what, I'm gonna slow my roll with you. You're trying to get to know me right now, and I've been burned so many times by so many people that put on a good act that no, I'm gonna actually just like push the brakes on this relationship that you're trying to get started, and we'll see how you behave over time. I want to see how the patterns emerge, and then once you have a pattern of behavior that I could look at and analyze, then we will see if we can sort of like move this business relationship or personal relationship to a deeper level. But as of right now, I'm really hesitant to get involved with anybody who isn't named Timothy Lim or Mark Pellegrini or Matt Weldon or Bill Williams or Rodrigo Aviles or Stephen Cummings and things like that. Time Warrior Saga, I had to listen to the Super Bowl halftime show. It gave me a headache. Did you see where they add the cheers during the podcast? Oh, yeah. So like I said, I wasn't watching the actual Super Bowl, but in my timeline, there were things that were showing up. So I did see that they were adding in the cheers and the applause to Bad Bunny and all of his stuff. And that was the other thing, is I saw these people that were just like, oh no, it was like a good it was a good show and blah blah blah. And a lot of people who like, I don't want to say they portrayed themselves as conservative, but definitely like not liberal. And they were just like, you don't really need to know what he was saying. It just like, you just got, it was like RG3, the old Redskins quarterback was just like, no, it was a wholesome show. Oh, you don't need to understand what he was saying. Just go with the vibes, man. And you're like, was it actually a wholesome show? If you actually translate what he was saying, it wasn't wholesome. And then he was on stage with Lady Gaga, of all people, who is Lady Gaga involved with? She's with that Abramoff, the occult Satanist artist, where they were doing all of this quote unquote arts, where they're covering human beings in like blood, pseudo blood or mock blood, eating off them in these like pseudo ritualistic things. And they're just like, yeah, it's just art, dude. It's just art. And you're like, is it art? Or are you just telling people that it's art so you could actually perform a ritualistic sacrifice under the guise of art? It's actually a ritualistic occult thing that is masquerading as art. And again, going back to who all these people are, if they tell you what they're doing up front, if they put it out in front of you and let you know this is who we are, this is what we're doing, and you go along with it, silent is consent unto the law, then in their world, again, you're thinking, you can't think of it always from like as if these people are default Christians, because they're not. If you weirdly, unfortunately, put yourself into the shoes or the mindset of an occultist, they are setting you up for failure. They're letting you know exactly what they're doing through art. And then when you say nothing, when you go along with it, when you are RG3 and you're like, oh yeah, that's totally wholesome, blah, 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 blah. Then in their mind, they're able to get away with it. It's like the devil, when you die, when you step before the judgment seat of God and you're looking over your life, the devil, Satan, is going to be like, I didn't force him to do anything. I just suggested things and he did those things. And he went along with those things. He has free will. She has free wills. And he went along. And you're not going to be able to say anything because, again, you weren't forced. You went along with it. So if you look at what these people are doing and you actually examine the lyrics that you're putting into your head, as I've said before, garbage in, garbage out. If you put degeneracy in your head, if you put pornography and lust and wrath and envy and all of that into your head, then it's going to come out. If you put all sorts of twisted things into your imagination, well, demons can actually act on your imagination and influence you. And they can put seeds of thought into your brain, into your soul. They plant all sorts of evil seeds. And if you are not in a state of grace, if you're not constantly asking for protection from your guardian angel, then unbeknownst to you, especially while you're sleeping and things like that, bloop, 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 they're just sowing all sorts of sinful seeds into your mind. You wake up, you start acting out these things, and you had no idea that you basically are consenting to all the things that are being put into your head. But I digress. All right, I think I've said quite a bit here today. We've been going for an hour and 43 minutes. I don't have too much more to say, but if anybody else has any last minute questions, I mean, I could always field any questions. Ethereal Dragon, nobody in my family heard of Bad Bunny before the Super Bowl. Exactly. Although I think he had a minor role in a previous Super Bowl, like when he was one of those, I don't know for sure. It's like, say that like Beyonce was the act, and then there's like a little minor, somebody says like one of the verses. I think he did something like that. But for the most part, Bad Bunny is not the thing. Like, you have to ask yourself, why are they pushing this person? A lot of these celebrities are manufactured. And going back to it, now we know, and there's plenty of celebrities that have said, over the years. Oh, did I with like Cat Williams and all of them? They're like basically saying like, yeah, in order to get to like the highest reaches of like, you know, Hollywood and the music industry, you basically got to sell your soul, brother. So, oh, speaking of that, of not selling your soul, but not living up to your potential or whatever. Not dogless today. Either way, thinking of how embarrassing it is that there was a time in my life when my devotion to Christ was weaker than J. Epinephrine Steen's allegiance to Satan. I was a pathetic soldier, an incompetent counterweight to evil. I suppose we're all prodigal sons at some point. Still stings to think about it. So yeah, every once in a while, I just think about when I was a young man and I was just going along with Hollywood, the music industry, everything. I thought it was all cool, man, and all of that. And then over time, you're like, actually, no, a lot of it is just straight evil. And I went along with it and I perpetuated it. And I was an enabler to like a bunch of evil people who were doing evil things, even if I didn't know exactly what they were doing. But my mind was clouded. You know, it's like when you live in sin, it clouds your spiritual vision. You can't see straight. And then you're just, again, you're like a zombie. You're walking through the fog. Bad things are going to happen to you. But by the grace of God, I was allowed to see the error of my ways. So thank you, God, for that. Grand Admiral, I basically walked away from the NFL when they started kneeling. Multiple family members served in the armed forces, and it was a slap in the face. Time where I don't think anyone did unless you like perverted Latin music. Yeah, no, that's a funny thing is like from what I did see of it. Oh, that was interesting. So like you had RG3 and his like sort of apologist basically saying like, oh no, it was a totally wholesome show. And you're like, wait a second. You had this guy with a jungle backdrop. So you had all these people in costumes that they were all the jungle. And within the jungle, you had people that were dressed as like savages or whatever. And they were all simulating sex with one another in the jungle. Like the total animalistic, speaking of lust, speaking about like desires of the flesh and giving into it. Like this guy is singing about just like, you know, hookup culture, you know, all this sort of stuff. And the backdrop is a bunch of people in the jungle, in the weeds, in the forest, like doing each other like animals. And then you have RG3 that's like, hey, man, why are you guys getting bent on a shape about this? This is totally wholesome. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. And again, the Christian man and the Christian woman, they're not perfect by any means, but you should at least be able to acknowledge the difference between right and wrong. You should be able to identify near occasions for sin. You should be able to identify like, hey, that road, that looks like a carnival road, but it's actually a slaughterhouse road. If I go down that road, I'm basically just walking, I'm like pigs to the slaughter. And I don't want to go down the Bad Bunny route where I'm giving high fives to people in the jungle that are, doing each other. Like on national television to millions of people. I should be able to call that kind of degenerate. Like, maybe, I don't know. Low Pro, they had people act as trees for the halftime show. Imagine being the theater kid in middle school, mad that they got cast as a tree. You finally make it in the industry, only play a tree again. Yeah, you're like this voyeuristic tree that only gets to sit there and watch while people have sex. You're like, wait, I actually went to NYU and I got like some sort of like theater degree that cost me $150,000 per year. Like my parents spent $600,000 for a bachelor in arts, like with a major in theater, so I can be voyeuristic trees at the Super Bowl watching some guy like, do a woman in front of Bad Bunny. Like I would just feel really sad. And actually, if I was the parent that put up over $500,000 for my kid to do that. And they were just like, hey, make sure to watch me on television. I'm going to be at the Super Bowl. And you're just like, that's not what I didn't put out another like refinance my mortgage so you can do that. The Ents did not march to war only to watch these orcs fornicate. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we're going into some weird commentary here, but I would like to thank everybody that tuned in. I was saying at the start, if you didn't tune in originally, if you go to Iconic Comics and you put in the code president, you will receive a 25% discount today. I don't know how long that's going to last. My guess is it'll probably last for a couple days. Yeah, so check it out. If you haven't picked up rosaries, if you haven't picked up the Seraphim Angel, you know what? Speaking about today, shameless plug. We've been talking about the demons all day. If you want a Seraphim to watch over you, I got the Seraphim plushies, got the Cairo mugs, we got the rosaries. As Mark Wahlberg would say, get yourself prayed up. We got all the books out. Got the bags, all sorts of stuff. And obviously, there's all the other IPs as well. And so check out all the creators at Iconic Comics. And if there's something that's up your alley, consider putting in promo code president at checkout, and you should get 20% discount. If you have any issues, just email Iconic Comics, and they're usually really good about that sort of stuff. And if you're not up on Calvin Coolidge, I highly suggest checking out Calvin Coolidge as well. Anyway, that's about it for now. Been talking about just under 2 hours. Thanks again to everyone. If you're a patron, thanks for being a patron. I really appreciate it. Everything that I raise from Patreon goes back into books, goes back into art, goes back into merchandise, and ultimately, every year, whenever there's new stuff available, I always let the patrons know, like, hey, dude, if you want a free plushie, if you want a free mug, if you want to, just let me know. I'll mail it to you. So on some level, if you're only putting in like $10 a year or $12, if I do my job correctly and I come out with a new merch or new book or something, I'm going to offer it to you for free because you're a patron, and you will get something that is actually worth more than you're putting in over the course of a year. So in many ways, it's like sort of like a little secret soul finder hack for people that are patrons, because like I said, I always, when I come out with a new book, especially if it's like the square bound, I always will be like, hey, if you're a patron, let me know. But most patrons actually don't want things for free. But like I said, if you do, I'm just happy that you're there. I'm happy that people supported me from the very beginning. And it's been like, I don't even know, 8 years now. And some of you are still around. So I really appreciate it. Thanks again. American Zombie says, great stream. Grand Admiral March Hare says, have a good one, everyone. Yeah, thanks to everyone who tuned in. Really appreciate it. And I will see you guys later. See you later. Bye. God bless.